My name is Adriana Quinn, and for as long as I can remember, I've carried the weight of every no I've ever heard, like a backpack full of bricks. The first time I pitched my startup idea to a potential investor, I was 24, full of ambition, and armed with a glossy slide deck that I'd poured months of sleepless nights into. I left that meeting practically begging for scraps of feedback, anything to tell me I was on the right path. All I got was a brisk handshake and the promise he'd keep me on his radar. Months later, I realized I was permanently off it. I'd spent the next 3 years bouncing from one well-lit boardroom to the next, each venture capital firm more exclusive than the last, each appointment guarded by layers of assistants and algorithms designed to sift out people like me. Time and again, I was ghosted. My emails went unanswered. My LinkedIn connection requests lingered in limbo. The message was always the same. You matter, but not quite enough. At 32, I should have been past this. My fintech platform, designed to democratize access to microloans in underserved communities, had traction. We had beta users in 3 countries. Our revenue, while modest, had doubled quarter over quarter. Yet when I tried to book that fateful investor meeting at Convex Capital, I hit a wall. Not even voicemail. My calls were simply dropped before the switch ever rang. They told me the partner responsible for early-stage investments was unavailable. They cleared their calendars sooner than they did for unicorn founders, with 10 times our valuation. I'd scoped out the building, watched the flow of black SUVs, the tailored security guards scanning faces at the entrance. I even tried to slip in through the side door, claiming I had a package for operations, but a well-timed guard intercepted me, polite but unyielding. Every rejection stung, but the most agonizing ache was the realization that it wasn't about my product or my passion, it was about perception. They didn't want to see yet another scrappy founder with too many letters after her name, too few zeros in her bottom line, and a voice that trembled when she spoke her own worth aloud. The day I finally decided I'd had enough, I walked into a favorite cafe near my apartment with the intention of drafting my resignation. I was going to leave the startup world behind, maybe find a steadier corporate role that wouldn't demand I beg for scraps of attention. But as the barista slid a macchiato across the counter, I noticed a poster pinned to the corkboard above the tip jar. Pitch your startup, next week, all welcome. The lines were crossed out and overwritten, a chaotic scrawl that had once read, corporate innovators only. Someone, an employee at the cafe perhaps, had circled, all welcome in bright red ink. It felt like a dare. My heart thundered. A pitch night open to anyone. No partner appointment required. No secret handshakes. No diamond tier membership needed. I snatched the poster, nearly tearing it off the board, and my mind flashed back to the first time I dared to dream I could change the world. I'd vowed back then that no barrier, no slight, no ghosted email would ever crush that dream. So I signed up. My fingers trembled as I scribbled my name and email under the blank spaces. The event was scheduled for 7 days later at a bar called The Observatory, a name that felt like a cruel joke for someone who had felt so small and overlooked. That week, I threw myself into preparation with a ferocity I hadn't shown before. I rewrote my slides, stripped away jargon, polished my story until it gleamed with authenticity. I practiced under the harsh glare of my living room lamp, timing every word, every pause, every breath. On the morning of the pitch night, I woke up at 5, too nervous to sleep. I paced my apartment, reciting my opening lines until they were etched into my bones. At 6 that evening, I stared at my reflection in the hallway mirror. I wore a tailored navy blazer that had once intimidated me with its crisp lines. Now it felt like armor. My hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, my face free of any hint of doubt. I clutched my laptop case like a shield and walked out the door without looking back. The observatory was packed. Low ceilings, exposed brick, and a sea of eager faces. Founders of every stripe, from AI whizzes to eco-friendly fashion brands. The stage was a simple riser with a single mic and a projector screen. There was no velvet rope, no velvet chairs, just wooden stools and a buzz of anticipation. I signed in, received a numbered ticket, 54, and took a seat in the back. As I watched pitch after pitch, I felt a mix of camaraderie and competitiveness. Some presenters stumbled over their words, Others had slide decks straight out of a Silicon Valley boardroom template. But when I looked around, I realized something. This room wasn't filtered by invite-only algorithms. Here, no one could block your access unless you blocked yourself. When my number finally flashed on the screen, my heart threatened to pound its way out of my chest. I rose, my legs stiff with adrenaline, and strode to the stage. The buzz of the crowd faded as I connected my laptop. I took a breath and spoke, my voice steadying as I launched into my story. Imagine living in a world where a single missed paycheck can mean the difference between putting food on the table or going to bed hungry. Where small businesses in emerging markets can't scale because they can't access capital. I saw nods in the audience, eyes reflecting back the urgency I felt. My slides moved with my narrative. Real user testimonials, growth charts colored by human faces, a roadmap that felt less like a slide and more like a lifeline for communities. When I finished, the room erupted in applause. I stepped back, stunned, as hands shot up. Questions, offers of meetings, even a few email addresses scribbled on napkins. I cleared my throat, forcing a smile. I was still the same scrappy founder who'd been shut out of every boardroom, but now I was the one commanding the room's attention. As I stepped off the stage, a man in a crisp shirt approached me, his eyes alight. Adriana Quinn, right? I'm Marcus Delaney. I'm with Silverwood Partners. We'd like to talk about your next round. The words echoed in my mind as I replayed the moment. I'd like to talk about your next round. Not, we'll keep you in mind, or call my assistant. I was still standing there, heart racing, unable to believe that after years of being locked out, I'd unlocked the door myself. I collected my things, my head buzzing with possibilities. Outside, the night air was cool, crisp, with summer's last breath. I felt a thrill of victory. No, a reclaiming of power. I had done this on my own terms, in my own space, in a room where the only requirement was courage. And yet, as I walked back to my apartment, I knew this was just the beginning. Silverwood was only the first of many. I had millions to raise, skeptics to silence, and a movement to build. But for the first time in my life, I felt untouchable. I reached my doorstep and paused, the heavy oak door before me. The night's triumph pulsed through my veins. And then, in the hush of the hallway, I whispered, "Tomorrow, we change everything." Quote. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. Tomorrow, we change everything. That morning, I woke to the persistent buzz of my phone, notifications flooding in like a river breaching its banks. My inbox, once an echo chamber of silence, was alive with messages. There were notes from fellow founders praising the clarity of my pitch, offers to connect me with advisors, and, most importantly, an email from Marcus Delaney at Silverwood Partners with the subject line, "Next Steps." I hesitated before tapping it open, half expecting some cruel twist. But the message was real. He wanted to schedule a detailed meeting with his team in 2 days. I glanced at the calendar on my wall. Wednesday. That gave me just 48 hours to prepare for the most important pitch of my life. I poured my first coffee of the day with shaking hands. The dark roast steamed in the mug as I sat at my kitchen table, replaying last night's whirlwind in my head. I remembered the weight of the applause, the hum of anticipation in that packed bar, and the moment Marcus introduced himself. His confidence in my vision felt like gravity had finally shifted beneath my feet. Yet as thrilling as it was, I knew this wasn't the finish line, only the starting gun. I needed to capitalize on the momentum and refine my pitch until it shone like polished steel. I opened my laptop and dove back into my slide deck, this time peeling it open like a mechanic's manual. I stripped away every superfluous word, cutting jargon that might confuse a seasoned investor, and replacing it with crisp, human stories of the communities I served. Over the next 24 hours, my world contracted to a single task, perfecting the narrative. I rehearsed aloud in front of my bedroom mirror, pacing until my shoes scuffed the hardwood floor. I recorded myself on my phone, analyzed each pause, each inflection, until my words carried the weight of conviction without tipping into desperation. At dawn on Wednesday, I arrived at Silverwood's offices in the financial district, armed with confidence and a freshly printed packet of supporting documents. The lobby was a cathedral of marble and glass, sunlight streaming through high windows. A discreet receptionist greeted me and directed me to the elevators. My heart pounded. On the 17th floor, I met Marcus in a high-ceilinged conference room overlooking the city skyline. The windows framed a grid of streets below where cars wove like arteries. He introduced me to two partners and his associate, three people with impeccably tailored suits and unreadable expressions. I noticed the skeptical arch of one partner's eyebrow as I set up my laptop. I felt a flicker of doubt creep in. I took a breath and launched into my pitch: the problem, the solution, the market potential, and, most importantly, the human impact. I narrated the story of a single mother in Lagos who'd built a small tailoring business thanks to our microloan, and the ripple effect that had on her children's education. Slides flipped in harmony with my words, each image a testament to the lives we touched. Halfway through, the partner who'd been watching me quietly interrupted. "Your traction is impressive," he said, "but what's your plan for risk management? Emerging markets are notorious for volatility." I paused, allowing the question to hang in the air. It was the moment that would define the meeting. I leaned forward, meeting his gaze. "Agreed," I began. "Risk is inherent, but it's manageable. We've built our underwriting model on local partnerships, NGOs, community leaders, and mobile money providers. This network reduces default risk by 70% based on our pilot data. More importantly, our on-the-ground teams conduct regular financial literacy workshops, creating a feedback loop that empowers borrowers to succeed." I clicked to a slide showing graphs of delinquency rates and repayment timelines. The partner's posture softened as he examined the data. Another member of the panel nodded thoughtfully. Marcus interjected with a supportive comment about the integrity of our process and my leadership. For the next 90 minutes, we drilled into every metric: user acquisition cost, lifetime value, regulatory compliance. Some questions were technical, others strategic, but by the end, we'd moved from skepticism to genuine curiosity. I could feel the room's energy shift. When I finished, there was a pregnant silence. Then Marcus smiled and rose from his seat. "Adriana, this is exactly the kind of founder we look for: resilient, data-driven, and deeply passionate. We'd like to lead your Series A." The words landed in my chest like fireworks. A surge of relief and exhilaration washed through me. I exhaled, hardly believing I'd heard correctly. As I gathered my things, Marcus added, "Get ready for our term sheet. We move fast. And we expect you to be ready." His tone was both challenge and promise. Out in the hallway, I paused, staring at the logo on the frosted glass: Silverwood Partners. I felt the weight of possibilities settling around my shoulders. This wasn't just about raising capital. It was proof that I had the power to forge my own path when every door had been slammed in my face. I stepped into the elevator, the city lights below twinkling like a constellation guiding me forward. My phone buzzed with a message from my co-founder. "Congratulations. What's the plan now?" I typed back, "We plan to change the world." And as the doors closed on the 17th floor, I realized I had a choice: settle into the comfort of success or push farther into the unknown. My heart pounded with the promise of what lay ahead. I knew the hardest battles were yet to come, but so were the greatest triumphs. The journey was only just beginning. Negotiating a term sheet isn't glamorous. It's a balancing act on a high wire. Every concession feels like losing ground. Every victory comes tethered to new expectations. The afternoon sun slanted through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Silverwood's boardroom as I sat across from Marcus Delaney and his legal counsel. My co-founder, Elias Moreno, flanked me on my right, his expression taut with anticipation. At 32, I'd learned to mask my nerves with meticulous preparation, but the butterflies in my stomach still danced like neon signs. The first clause was straightforward: the pre-money valuation. Silverwood's initial figure was generous, far beyond anything I'd dared imagine, but it came with standard protective provisions. They wanted a 20% liquidation preference and a board seat, standard but heavy. Adriana, Marcus began, his tone deceptively casual, we're excited by your traction, but we need to ensure alignment on governance. We'd like to nominate 2 directors, including myself. I exchanged a quick glance with Elias. 2 seats for 4 founders' votes felt like an imbalance. Then I remembered the power we'd demonstrated the week before, how our pitch had galvanized that room of strangers. I squared my shoulders. I appreciate the offer, I replied, imprinting calmness on my voice. Our existing board has 2 seats filled by advisors who've contributed strategically from day one. I propose we limit external seats to 1, yours, so we maintain cohesive decision-making. In return, we'll agree to a 15% liquidation preference, capped at 1.5x. A murmur rippled through the table. Marcus studied me for a heartbeat before leaning back. That's bold, he said, but I respect it. They paused to recalibrate, and the lawyer slid a revised term sheet across the table. I scanned the clauses, space for 1 board seat, a reduced liquidation preference. It was within reach, but then a new provision caught my eye, an accelerated vesting clause triggered by a change in control. Can you clarify the rationale? I asked, pen hovering. The lawyer explained that it protected key contributors in an acquisition scenario, but it felt like a trap, tying our hands in future negotiations. I countered, suggesting a clawback provision instead, one that activated only upon a finish-line acquisition against our will. Momentum shifted in my favor as we hammered out details row by row. Vesting schedules, anti-dilution adjustments, ratchets. Elias and I pressed every advantage, mindful that every fraction of equity we safeguarded translated into long-term operational autonomy. After 3 hours, our sweat-stained term sheet lay finalized, both parties nodding in exhausted agreement. As we shook hands, Marcus offered a smile that merged respect with an unspoken challenge. We expect great things from you, Adriana. Walking out of that building, I felt both triumphant and wary. The Series A was in sight, but I knew better than to celebrate prematurely. Investors write checks with one hand and wield expectations with the other. Back at my loft, I spread the term sheet on my dining table beneath the exposed Edison bulbs. The weight of every clause pressed upon me as I texted our attorney to finalize. It felt like crossing a threshold. This agreement meant our run rate had to triple within the next 18 months, or we'd face a dilution storm. That night, Elias and I burned the midnight oil with our small core team, just 5 when I'd started, now 9 strong. We outlined an aggressive roadmap: expand into 2 new markets, launch a mobile app feature, and hire regional operations leads. Every task list item felt simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. The hardest part came when I drafted the announcement email for our wider staff. I wanted to convey the magnitude of the milestone without strip mining our momentum for ego. I typed, "Team, we've officially closed our Series A with Silverwood Partners at a $30 million valuation. This investment is a testament to your dedication and the lives we've already touched. Now we have the resources to scale our mission and deliver on our promises. Tomorrow, we kick off with a full-day strategy workshop. See you at 9 sharp." Hitting send felt like releasing a firefly into a storm. Within minutes, the company's Slack exploded with congratulatory emoji, party popper, rocket, hooray, and an undertone of nervous energy. Some messages flagged resource constraints, others celebrated personal wins. I could feel the current of ambition charging through our digital halls. But as the chatter soared, a private message lit up on my screen from our head of engineering, Priya Rao. "Audrey, urgent. I just received a call from someone claiming to be from a rival fintech. They have details about our product roadmap. Roadmap we haven't shared publicly. How would they know?" My pulse spiked. I traced the potential leak. The investor deck slides I'd shared with Silverwood. Though their counsel had signed NDAs, the possibility that confidential information had made its way to the competition was real. Worse, it could undermine our first-mover advantage in emerging markets. I dropped everything and dialed Marcus. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Priya alerted me," I said, voice low. "Something's out there. Can you confirm if any of our materials were distributed beyond your team?" Marcus paused, then sighed. "I'll investigate immediately. We trust our partners, but I'll get to the bottom of this." Before I hung up, I caught his hesitation. An infinitesimal crack in an otherwise unshakable facade. Doubt crept in. What if Silverwood's network was compromised? What if my data wasn't secure, and our next steps hinged on fragile trust? That night, sleep eluded me. I stared at the ceiling as midnight edged toward dawn. 1,000 scenarios played out in my head. Lawsuits, regulatory scrutiny, a race to patch vulnerabilities. I realized that raising millions was only one battle. Preserving that capital and protecting our vision was another. In the dim glow of my desk lamp, I drafted a crisis plan. 1. Conduct a security audit of our investor communications. 2. Engage a trusted third party for digital forensics. 3. Limit further document sharing until we secure airtight protocols. 4. Communicate transparently with the team to maintain morale. I knew this was a turning point, not just for my company, but for me as a founder. Would I buckle under the pressure of expectation and scrutiny, or would I harness this challenge to strengthen our foundation? I exhaled, resolving to face the storm head-on. The next morning, I'd call a full company meeting and lay out the situation. Because leadership wasn't about having all the answers. It was about standing unwavering when the world demanded them. But as I shut off my lamp and closed my eyes, one question echoed in my mind. Who in my inner circle could I truly trust? The conference room was silent as every screen flickered on. I watched 30 faces look up at me. Engineers, operations leads, marketing strategists, and regional directors who'd flown in from as far as Nairobi and Jakarta. The tension in the air was palpable. We'd just announced our Series A, but the leak threat hung over us like a storm cloud. I took a deep breath, recalling the crisis plan I'd sketched at 3 a.m. I tapped the microphone. Thank you all for joining on short notice. I know there's excitement about our new funding, but I need to address a critical issue. We've received credible reports that sensitive materials, our product roadmap, and proprietary underwriting model were accessed by an outside party without our consent. A hush fell. Priya's fingers tapped nervously on her laptop. Elias pressed his hand against his arm, and I sensed the collective heartbeat of the room quicken. I want you to hear this directly from me, I continued. I will not tolerate breaches of trust or security lapses. We are locking down access to all external documents until we've audited our communications and implemented stricter protocols. A hand shot up. Our regional lead for Latin America, Sofia Alvarez. Adriana, she said, what does this mean for our launch timeline? We're scheduled to roll out in Mexico City next month. Her question was precise. The future of our expansion hinged on clarity. I nodded. We're on track, I replied. The roadmap is unchanged, but we will share details through secure channels only. I've engaged a third-party cybersecurity firm to audit our investor communications. Once complete, I will personally brief each regional team. I expect the audit to conclude in 10 business days. Until then, coordinate through our internal portal, not email or Slack. Sophia exhaled, relief mingling with resolve. Another colleague, Jamal from engineering, chimed in. Will our developers need to re-sign any NDAs? Yes, I said. We'll distribute updated agreements today. Any questions about the process? Reach out to legal. No one is exempt. We need every individual to commit to safeguarding our vision. I looked around the room. Eyes that had once sparkled with victory now mirrored the gravity of leadership. I realized then that raising funds was only half the battle. Preserving integrity and unity under pressure defined true success. After the meeting, in the quiet of my corner office, I drafted a personal note to the team, a mix of accountability and encouragement. I thanked them for their hard work and assured them that this challenge would make us stronger. I pressed send and allowed myself a moment to exhale. But as I closed my laptop, a buzz on my phone startled me. A text from an unknown number. Nice pitch. Too bad I know what comes next. No signature, just the words, and a link that I didn't dare click. My pulse spiked. Someone was mocking me. It was a provocation and a promise. I knew then the war had shifted from boardrooms and barroom pitches to the shadows where information and misinformation could decimate startups overnight. I reached for my phone and dialed Elias. Meet me at HQ in 30 minutes, I said. Lock your phone. This is official business. He arrived, coffee in hand, his his expression unreadable. I showed him the message. He frowned. I don't recognize this number. Looks like someone's playing games. Games cost money, I said, and we've got investors circling. We need to stop this now. I want our legal counsel to engage law enforcement and our cybersecurity team to trace the source. But I need you, Elias, your technical expertise, to confirm no further breaches. He nodded, determination hardening around his eyes. I'm on it. That afternoon, we mobilized the crisis response. Legal filed a complaint, digital forensics began, and the cybersecurity firm ran penetration tests. On the ground, our teams continued executing the expansion roadmap, unaware of the full extent of our internal battle. I filed reports to Silverwood Partners. Transparency was non-negotiable. Late into the night, I reviewed the day's progress. The leak threat had not derailed us, but the constant vigilance weighed heavily. I scribbled in my journal. Leadership means staying composed when the ground shifts beneath you. It means making hard calls that protect the mission, even if it shakes the team's confidence. Quote. As I closed the journal, I remembered Marcus's words. We expect great things from you. Now I was beginning to understand what that entailed. Resilience in the face of shadows, unwavering vision amid chaos. Tomorrow, I'd stand before a global cohort of microloan recipients in Nairobi and tell them exactly how we'd protect their future. But tonight, I would steel myself for the battles ahead, for trust was fragile, and enemies could emerge from the most unexpected places. The horizon was no longer just about capital. It was about safeguarding every promise I'd made, and every life depending on them. The sunrise over Nairobi painted the horizon in shades of gold and rose as I stepped onto the stage in front of a crowd of hundreds. The Kenyan capital had become our proving ground, a place where our microloan platform had already helped over 1,000 entrepreneurs turn dreams into livelihoods. Yet today's gathering felt different. This wasn't just an update. It was a statement of intent. As I took the mic, I scanned the faces. Street vendors with hopeful eyes, small shop owners in crisp shirts, young innovators clutching smartphones. Their faith in our mission weighed on me, reminding me that every decision at headquarters rippled across continents. Good morning, I began, my voice carrying across the amphitheater. I'm Adriana Quinn, co-founder and CEO of Lend Forward. When we launched here 6 months ago, we never imagined the speed at which our impact would grow. But your success stories have fueled our drive to push harder, innovate faster, and stand by you every step of the way. I shared recent metrics, portfolio health, repayment rates, user adoption curves, and anecdotes of lives changed. A widower who opened a bakery, a teacher who financed her classroom renovations. The audience erupted in applause after each story, their energy a living testimony of why I endured sleepless nights and boardroom negotiations. But I knew celebration had to be tempered with vigilance. The leak incident and subsequent security overhaul had tested our unity. Now, as I laid out the next phase, expanding into 2 new East African markets and rolling out a peer-to-peer lending module, I sensed their collective breath catch at the scale of our ambition. In the exact midpoint of my address, I paused and smiled, raising a hand to hush the crowd. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story. Laughter rippled through the audience. Despite the gravity of our mission, there was room for a touch of the platform's signature voice, direct, engaging, and unafraid to blend sincerity with a call to action. I dove back into the presentation, a live demo of the new peer-to-peer interface, colorful charts showing projected impact, and video testimonials from beta users in Kampala and Dar es Salaam. Each slide was punctuated by questions. How will this work in rural areas? What about interest rate caps? Can we build local partnerships for digital wallets? I fielded each query with transparent data and collaborative spirit, reaffirming that our approach was as much about community input as it was about cutting-edge tech. After 90 minutes, the session closed with thunderous applause. I stepped down to meet dozens lined at the microphone, eager to share their own insights. In that sea of friendly faces, I felt the weight of my role, not just as a founder raising capital, but as a steward of trust and empowerment. Backstage, Elias greeted me with a grin and a cold bottle of water. You crushed it, he said. They love you here. I paused, the adrenaline still thrumming. They believe in us, I corrected, which means we can't afford to let them down. He nodded, his gaze shifting to the bustling crowd assembling outside. Next stop, Nairobi, Arusha, then Kigali. You ready? I exhaled and raised my water bottle. Let's finish what we started. That evening, as the city lights flickered on, Elias and I sat in a local bistro overlooking the skyline. Over steaming cups of Kenyan coffee, we drafted plans, partnership agreements with mobile money providers, hiring local operations leads, and refining our credit scoring algorithm with AI-driven insights. But even as excitement surged, I couldn't shake the undercurrent of caution. The anonymous threat message still loomed like a ghost in my thoughts. My phone buzzed intermittently, but I refused to look. Instead, I focused on the maps sprawled before us, a constellation of markers representing current and future markets. Our legal team had updated NDAs, our cybersecurity firm continued their forensic work, and Marcus Delaney at Silverwood Partners had sent a supportive note. Keep me posted on developments. We stand with you. His words anchored me. Despite the shadows that had crept into our journey, we had allies who believed in our vision. I felt a surge of gratitude for the unconventional path that had led me here, from the back of a bar in London to a bustling Kenyan amphitheater. As we wrapped up, Elias leaned in. Tomorrow we host a workshop for local entrepreneurs. It'll be intense, but it's crucial. Are you up for another early morning? I smiled, exhaustion and exhilaration entwined. Always, because this is why we're here, to give people the tools to rewrite their futures. He raised his cup. To rewriting futures. I clinked mine against his. To rewriting futures. And as the night settled over Nairobi, I understood that real impact didn't come from closed-door meetings or term sheets. It came from standing on stages like this, hearing the heartbeat of communities, and forging a future that belonged to all of us. The workshop began before dawn in a makeshift conference hall at the heart of Nairobi's Innovation District. Rows of folding chairs faced a long table where hand-drawn schematics of our new peer-to-peer lending interface glowed under harsh LED lights. A banner overhead read, "Lend Forward Community Workshop, Building Together." I stepped up to the podium, scanning familiar and new faces. Women weaving baskets, barbers with well-worn razors, tech-savvy students balancing laptops on crossed legs, all united by a hunger for access to capital and the chance to write their own stories. As I greeted them in Swahili, the same language I'd struggled with months ago, I felt the distance I'd traveled as both a founder and an ally. We dove into the curriculum, risk assessment basics, transparent fee structures, and the mechanics of our platform's P2P match engine. I watched as participants paired up for role-playing exercises, one as borrower, one as lender, negotiating interest rates under guidance from our local trainers. Every question they asked tested us. How do we ensure trust between strangers? What safeguards are there against default? How can we use this to empower women entrepreneurs? Their curiosity sharpened my own mission. By mid-morning, a small riot of excitement broke out when our mobile team demonstrated the new SMS-based loan application for areas with low smartphone penetration. A group of farmers huddled around a single phone, following step-by-step instructions, as the screen scrolled through prompts in Swahili and English. When the device beeped "Loan Approved," their cheers echoed through the hall. Proof that technology and community could collide in transformative ways. Amid the flurry, I slipped away to a side room to join Elias and Priya. Our cybersecurity partner's detailed report lay open on the table. The forensic team had traced the leak to a compromised email server, an unpatched vulnerability in an early prototype of our investor slide deck sharing portal. Worse, they discovered evidence of ongoing surveillance, suggesting a coordinated effort to sabotage our expansion. Priya's expression was grim. They weren't amateurs, Adri. This was orchestrated by someone who knows our infrastructure intimately, almost like an insider. I inhaled, adrenaline surging. An insider threat would be our deadliest vulnerability. I flipped through the report, noticing timestamps that coincided with one of our all-hands Zoom calls and a file-sharing session Marcus had led last week. The question that had haunted me since Part 4 came roaring back. Who in my circle could I trust? The morning workshop continued without pause, but my mind raced. I excused myself and commandeered the nearest laptop. I logged into our internal admin dashboard, tracing access logs, cross-referencing IP addresses, and flagging anomalies. Every click revealed more questions. Why did a developer in our Nairobi office suddenly log in at 3 a.m.? Who forwarded our NDA-protected slides to an anonymous email alias? By noon, I had a list of suspects narrowed down to 3 individuals with elevated access privileges. One was a regional manager I'd personally vouched for, another an engineer who joined through a referral from Silverwood Partners, and the third a freelance consultant who'd helped us localize our interface. Each had motive, means, and opportunity. I returned to the workshop floor, my smile in place but my thoughts elsewhere. I needed answers, and fast. Instead of rejoining the session, I texted Elias, "Meet me at the rooftop in 30. Bring the device logs." He appeared as promised, his expression taut. I passed him a USB drive. "Boot this on our secure terminal. Let's see who's been digging where they shouldn't." He nodded and slipped away, and I turned back to the workshop. I needed to project confidence. Our community couldn't see us unravel. I raised my microphone once more. "I've seen incredible innovation here today," I said. "And I want you to know, no matter the challenges we face behind the scenes, our commitment to you remains unshakable." They cheered, but my heart thundered. Because as I stepped off the stage, the question loomed heavier than ever. When the walls close in, will I root out the betrayer before they destroy everything we've built? The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the courtyard. Elias found me by the entrance, his face pale in the dying light. "You need to see this," he said, USB drive in hand. "It's not one of the 3, it's someone we trusted the most." My breath caught. I felt the weight of every discarded investor pitch, every closed door, every sleepless night culminating in this moment. They'd blocked me once. Tomorrow, I'd find out who was trying to bury us for good, and decide exactly how to stop them. The evening air in Nairobi smelled of rain and dust as the city prepared for a storm. I stood on the rooftop of our local operations hub, the skyline of high-rise lights twinkling against gathering clouds. Elias slid the USB drive across the metal table, his face taut with unease. The gravity of his words from earlier, "It's someone we trusted the most," echoed in my mind. I inserted the drive into our secure terminal and watched as directories populated the screen. The files were named innocuously. Investor_deck_v3.pdf. Roadmap_2025. PPTX. Each one time-stamped and user-associated. I scrolled through the access logs. Heart pounding. Then I saw it. User Idaho 00213. Belonging to our head of product, Marisol Chen, my earliest hire, the first person I'd trusted with my vision nearly 4 years ago. Marisol, whose brilliant mind had architected the lending algorithm. Marisol, who'd been with me through every pitch rejection and sleepless marathon. I inhaled, mind racing. Why would Marisol betray us? I pulled her user profile, digging for clues. No disciplinary history. Glowing performance reviews. Hashed aside OOO messages from a recent vacation. Nothing flagged. Yet the logs were irrefutable. Before I could speak, Elias placed a hand on my arm. "There's more," he said. "Look at this path." She forwarded files at 3:07 a.m., then logged out from an IP that doesn't match our secure VPN. Whoever accessed her account did so after she opened the file. It suggests her credentials were compromised, or that she was coerced. A chill ran down my spine. We prepared for pressure from investors, from rivals, but never from within our own ranks. I scanned the horizon, raindrops beginning to ripple on the metal surface. The storm was coming, and so was the reckoning. "We need to talk to her," I said, "now, but privately." Elias nodded. We descended to the lobby, bypassing the main entrance to avoid alerting Marisol. I dialed her extension, my voice steady. "Marisol, can you come to my office? It's urgent." Minutes later, she arrived, her expression curious. You wanted to see me? Everything okay? I gestured for her to sit. I've been reviewing some logs. There's activity on your account in the early hours, forwarding confidential materials. I need to understand what happened. Her face drained of color. I don't know what you mean. I never forwarded anything. Show me. I pulled up the timestamps, the file names, and the outgoing recipient, an encrypted alias I didn't recognize. She leaned closer, eyes flicking over the screen. I swear, Adriana, I didn't do this, she whispered, voice trembling. My laptop. Someone must have accessed it. Last week, I left it unlocked, ran to the restroom, and left documents open. But I was only updating the slides per Marcus's feedback. I never meant to send anything to anyone. I studied her. Her eyes were red, her hands shook. But was that fear or guilt? My heart twisted. I remembered the countless nights we'd brainstormed features, the laughter over shared dinner orders, the silent comfort during boardroom blow-ups. Could she really be compromised? Who else knows your password? I asked. Have you shared your credentials? She shook her head vehemently. Never. It's just me, but... She hesitated, voice breaking. There was a call. Last night, I got a voicemail from an unfamiliar number saying they'd help me fix my home loan paperwork. Demanded I log into my work email to verify my identity. I didn't think much of it. I clicked the link, thought it was from the company's HR system. Tears welled in her eyes. I was stupid. They tricked me. My chest tightened. A phishing attack. They'd found a back door, Marisol's compromised credentials, seeded through a fake HR portal. The rivals had weaponized social engineering, and she was the unknowing pawn. I exhaled slowly, the burden shifting. All right, I said gently. You're not in trouble, Marisol, but we need to lock your account and rotate every password. We're launching a full security sweep. I want you to take tomorrow off. Get some rest. We'll handle this. Quote. She nodded, relief and shame mingling in her eyes. Thank you, Adriana. I'm so sorry. I reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. This is on me. I should have anticipated a stronger phishing defense. We'll make this right. She managed a weak smile before turning to leave. As the door closed, I turned to Elias. We need a company-wide phishing training, immediately, and I want our cybersecurity team to test every department, no exceptions. He nodded, typing notes. I'll set it up. Later, as rain battered the rooftop, I stood alone in silence, the wind tearing at my hair. The betrayal had cut deeper than any pitch rejection. But in that storm, I found clarity. Leadership meant shielding my team from both overt and invisible threats. It meant forging resilience, not just funding. Tomorrow, I'd address the entire company, own our lapses, and steer us toward ironclad security. And then, we'd launch our biggest product update yet, one that would redefine microfinance. Because while they had tried to bury us, they had only unearthed our resolve. The storm broke, torrents of rain cascading down the windows, and as I faced the tempest outside, I whispered to myself, we rise, always. We rise, always. Morning light filtered through the skylight of our Nairobi hub as I reviewed the agenda for the day, a full schedule of security drills, product demos, and a late afternoon video conference with potential partners in Accra. My muscles ached from yesterday's rooftop confrontation, but adrenaline kept me moving. No time for fatigue when the stakes were this high. At breakfast, I joined Marisol and Priya at our communal table. The tension from the previous night's phishing breach still lingered in their expressions, but today's focus was on rebuilding trust. I slid a stack of freshly minted training certificates across to each team lead. Each of you, I began, has completed our new cybersecurity boot camp. These certificates aren't just paper. They represent our commitment to protect every user's data, keep them somewhere visible as a reminder of our shared responsibility. Marisol accepted hers, her fingers brushing the edges. I saw determination flicker in her eyes. Yesterday's shame was giving way to resolve. Thank you, Adriana, she said softly. I won't let you down again. I smiled, nodding. We're a team. Security is non-negotiable. Quote. We walked to the conference room together, where Elias and I would lead the first of many simulated phishing drills. Employees sat at individual stations, ready to test their vigilance. I launched the exercise with a live demonstration. a real-time email simulation designed to appear as though it came from a high-ranking investor. Notice the subtle typos I pointed out on the shared screen, the mismatched logo in the header, the urgency in the language. These are red flags. Always verify the sender's address and never click links without confirmation. Hands went up as questions followed. Some employees admitted they'd clicked similar links in the past. Others expressed frustration at the extra steps. I listened to every concern, ensuring the team understood that these protocols were not obstacles, but shields. By midday, the drill concluded with a 96% success rate, a marked improvement over our initial 43%. Murmurs of pride rippled through the room, and I felt a swell of hope. We were learning from mistakes and growing stronger. Next on the agenda was the Accra partnership call. I retreated to the small video suite, logged onto Zoom, and dialed in. The Ghanaian impact investors smiled as their screens loaded. "Adriana, we're impressed by your traction in East Africa," began Aisha Mensah, the group's lead. "But we have questions about scalability and regulatory compliance in West Africa." I launched into my prepared deck: market analysis, pilot results in Lagos, legal counsel recommendations. As charts and case studies filled the screen, I sensed a shift from doubt to genuine interest. Aisha's nods confirmed we were speaking their language. Halfway through, a connection glitch froze her image. My heart skipped. "Sorry, Adriana, we're experiencing a network issue," her voice crackled before cutting out. Static hummed in my ear as the screen flickered off. I hit the hold button, panic rising. This was exactly the kind of technical snag that could derail a crucial deal. But then I remembered our contingency plan. An alternate dial-in number and pre-shared PDF summary of the deck. I swiftly opened the chat window and pasted the details. Moments later, Aisha's voice returned. "Got it. Reviewing now. Please continue." Relief washed through me as I picked up where I left off, adapting the presentation to the PDF's format. When we finally wrapped, Aisha smiled. "Thank you, Adriana. We appreciate your resilience under pressure. We'll be in touch for the next steps." I exhaled, logging off and sinking into the chair. Twice today, we dodged sabotage, one digital, one technical. The path to progress was littered with hidden landmines, but each time we navigated them, we emerged stronger. As the afternoon sun dipped low, I prepared for the final event of the day, a demo showcase for local press. Community support was vital, and positive coverage could sway both customers and investors. I rehearsed my key messages, mindful that every public appearance shaped our narrative. I stepped onto the stage in a nearby media center, a crowd of reporters and camera crews waiting. I clicked the remote, unveiling a live demo of our peer-to-peer lending interface, this time live, no room for errors. The screen scrolled through user flows, proposed match pairings, and success stories from Nairobi. Suddenly, a power surge caused the lights to flicker. The projector sputtered and went dark. A gasp rose from the audience. My pulse quickened. This wasn't a random outage. It felt too timed, too precise. In that moment, I realized the next battle wasn't behind the scenes. It was right here in the spotlight. "Stay with me," I called, voice steady. "Let's show them we can adapt under any circumstance." And as technicians scrambled to restore power, I began narrating the demo from memory, every feature detail, every user benefit, until my words painted the interface in vivid clarity. The audience leaned in, captivated by raw storytelling and unbroken determination. When the lights finally returned, I clicked through the final slides effortlessly. The applause that followed felt earned, hard-won. Later, as reporters lined up to interview me, I stepped aside and sent a quick message to Elias. "Prepare for a deeper investigation. This blackout wasn't accidental." He replied almost instantly, "On it. I'll check the power logs and see if there's any sign of foul play." I offered smiles to the press, but inside, my mind raced. Who had the access and the motive to sabotage us in real time? A competitor? A disgruntled former employee? The questions multiplied as the evening wore on. As I finally left the media center, Nairobi's streets buzzed with nightlife. I paused, looking at the illuminated skyline, and whispered to the wind, They may try to dim our lights, but we will shine brighter. My phone lit up with an alert from our facilities team at midnight. Power anomaly detected in media center. I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was the confirmation I'd been waiting for. I had stepped off that stage hours earlier, weathering a blackout that almost became a public debacle. But now here was tangible proof of sabotage. I swiped through the incident report in our secure operations app. The log showed a deliberate spike in current draw just as the demo reached its crescendo, a surge that fatally overloaded the projector circuit. Whoever engineered this had intimate knowledge of the venue's infrastructure or insider access to our schedule. My mind raced through the possibilities. Rival fintech, vengeful former employee, someone with more resources than I'd anticipated. I tapped into a video feed from a discreet security camera in the hallway of the media center. Flashes of movement caught my eye. A figure in a dark hoodie slipping past the side entrance just after the lights went out. The image was grainy, but I froze the frame. The person was tall, their gait familiar, but I couldn't place them. I texted Elias, "Meet me at HQ now, we need video access." As I waited for a response, I replayed the day's events in my head. We'd triumphed through adversity, technical glitch in Accra, phishing breach, and now this. Each time, we'd adapted. But combined, these attacks felt coordinated, a multi-pronged assault on our credibility and momentum. The text came back, "On my way. Also, the Ghana call is being reviewed by one of their advisory partners. They flagged the surfacing of your P2P demo video on Darknet forums." My stomach dropped. Darknet forums? "Yeah," Elias replied. Someone posted a link to the recorded demo, calling it theft-ready microloan tech. They're claiming LendForward stole code from some defunct P2P startup. A cold dread washed over me. If that rumor spread, investors would balk, regulators would swoop in, and our credibility would crumble like dry sand. I needed to quash the narrative immediately. I sprang into action, drafting a public statement for our social channels and press contacts, asserting our intellectual property rights and underscoring months of independent development, code audits, and open-source acknowledgements. I CC'd our legal team, instructing them to issue takedown notices and prepare cease-and-desist letters. But words on the internet moved at a glacier's pace compared to the speed of rumor on darknet message boards. I knew we had to hit back with proof of authenticity. I opened my secure cloud storage, selecting the commit history of our Git repository, time-stamped, publicly verifiable logs showing the evolution of our algorithm from prototype to production-ready code. I compiled the logs into a concise technical white paper, annotated each commit with explanatory notes, and linked to our independent code audit from CyberShield Security. Then I scheduled an urgent webinar for our global developer community, inviting industry experts to verify and discuss our IP trail. By the time Elias arrived at HQ, bleary-eyed but determined, I'd sent invitations, social posts, and legal directives. He dropped the USB drive containing the power anomaly video into my hand. "This is raw footage," he said. "But look, at the 42-second mark you can see a tattoo on the saboteur's wrist." I leaned in, zooming the frame. The person's hand rested on a glass door handle as they slipped away, revealing a silver compass rose inked around the wrist bone. My heart raced as I recognized the symbol. The same compass design on the inside cover of Marisol's favorite notebook. A gift I'd given her 2 years ago when she joined LendForward. "This can't be real," I whispered. "No one else would have that notebook," Elias said. "Marisol's is one of the only ones in the office." My mind spun. Marisol had confessed to clicking a phishing link, yet claimed she didn't knowingly forward anything. Could someone have coerced her again? Or was this someone else wearing a look-alike tattoo? The odds felt impossible. I swallowed hard and hit dial on my secure line. Direct call to Marcus Delaney at Silverwood. I needed an ally with resources and authority. "Marcus, it's Adriana. I need assistance. We have evidence of sabotage at the Nairobi Media Center. Video shows someone with a compass rose tattoo slipping in at the time of the blackout. Any chance you can check your contacts?" There was a pause, then Marcus's voice, low and urgent. "Adriana, hold on. I have a meeting in 5, but I'll circle back with you as soon as possible." Before I could respond, the line disconnected. I stared at my phone, uncertainty twisting in my gut. Would Silverwood stand by us in this crisis, or would they see our turmoil as a sign to pull back? I needed confirmation, and fast. Time was running out to contain the narrative and secure our expansion plans. I turned to Elias. We have to track down whose wrist that is, and we have to do it quietly. If this leaks beyond our walls, he nodded grimly. I'm compiling access logs now. Let's cross-reference who was in the media center that day and check for anyone with ties to local infrastructure or personal connections to our staff. I felt the weight of every decision pressing down. We were no longer just defending a startup. We were defending a mission, lives built on microloans and the trust of thousands. And at the center of it all was a mystery. Whose loyalty could I truly count on? As I closed my laptop, the tension coiled tighter than ever. The saboteur was out there, and so was the threat of betrayal from within. I clenched my fists, determination burning in my chest. We find them, I said, my voice steel and resolve, and we finish what we started. But as the city slept below, the compass rose tattoo loomed large in my mind, a signal that the next twist in this battle would test every ounce of my leadership and trust. And that, more than anything, terrified me. The tension in our Nairobi headquarters was palpable the moment I stepped through the doors that morning. Security cameras had flagged unusual activity overnight. Multiple unauthorized badge swipes at the back entrance, all around the time the media center blackout occurred. I exchanged a grave look with Elias, who was already in the operations war room, surrounded by whiteboards scrawled with timelines and lists of suspects. I've cross-referenced the badge logs with the security footage, he reported immediately. That compass rose tattoo appeared on badge 214, assigned to Samira Otieno, our former head of regional partnerships. She left the company last month. My breath caught. Samira had been a formidable ally in forging our early East African collaborations. Her network of NGO contacts had propelled our initial growth. Yet she'd departed under the guise of pursuing personal projects, leaving with seemingly mutual goodwill. Could she have turned against us? I paced the room, mind racing. What else do we know about her departure? Did she have any disputes with management or conflicts of interest? Elias tapped a marker against the board. She cashed out a small equity stake, but her NDA remains binding. No public statements. There were rumors she was in talks with a competitor, but nothing confirmed. I nodded, the outlines of betrayal sharpening. We need to approach this delicately. I'll call her first, see if she'll talk. But I want to be prepared for evasions, or worse. Quote. By mid-morning, I was dialing Samira from my secure line. My palms were slick with adrenaline. The phone rang twice before her voice came through. Warm, surprised, curious. Adriana, it's been a while. To what do I owe the pleasure? Samira, I need your help. We've encountered a serious security breach, and evidence suggests someone with your badge number was in our media center the night of the blackout. Her tone flickered. That's odd. I left that badge in the office after my last day. I assumed it was deactivated. I pressed. According to our logs, someone used it at 6:03 p.m. on demo night and again at 11:59 p.m. Does that ring a bell? She inhaled sharply. No. That can't be right. I was in Nairobi for a fundraiser that evening, but I left the badge at home. Are you sure? I met her evasion with calm. Samira, this isn't a witch hunt. I need the truth. If you have information, now's the time. There was a pause. I know a consultant who borrowed my badge to test the new Wi-Fi emplacements in the building. I thought it was harmless. It was better than forcing visitors through the front desk. But that was weeks ago. I didn't think. My heart pounded. Do you know who? She hesitated. He goes by Malik, African-British tech consultant, specializes in network security. He helped with your connectivity tests, remember? Malik Khan, I murmured. He was here on our invite, but he had no regular access beyond that day. Why would he need your badge? Her voice faltered. He said he'd return it. I'll call him. Let me get back to you. The line clicked dead. My mind raced. Malik Khan, the cybersecurity expert we'd invited months ago, reputed for his work with NGOs across Africa. If he'd colluded with Samira or acted independently, the ramifications could be catastrophic. I turned to Elias. Step 1. I need you to trace Malik's communications. Emails, phone records. Step 2. Patch our door access to require biometric confirmation for top-secret areas, effective immediately. Elias nodded and dove back into the logs. I exhaled, tension knotting my shoulders. By afternoon, news of our internal probe had leaked to the team. I gathered everyone for a brief all-hands. No slide deck, just raw transparency and a resolute promise to protect the company's integrity. We face threats from outside and inside, I told them, but our strength lies in our unity and vigilance. Today we fortify every system, every practice, and we commit anew to our mission of empowering communities. We will not let this derail us. Their applause was steady, but concern lingered in murmured side conversations. In the evening, Samira called back. Her voice was urgent. Adriana, Malik admitted he used the badge to gain deeper network credentials. He said he was testing vulnerabilities. I thought he was helping. He's been arrested tonight by local authorities on charges of corporate espionage. He confessed to orchestrating the blackout and leaking our demo video to fund a rival too obscure to matter until tonight. A wave of relief surged through me, confirmed motive, suspect in custody. But relief was fleeting. The damage had been done. Thank you, Samira, I said. Please forward me any communications you have with him. And thank you for your help in clearing your name. After we hung up, I sank into my chair, exhaustion washing over me. We had a saboteur in custody, but our most vulnerable moment had been broadcast on niche forums, threatening our reputation. I drafted a second public statement, this time announcing Malik's arrest, clarifying that his actions were unauthorized and repudiated by Lend Forward. I couched it in gratitude for Samira's cooperation and the Nairobi authorities. Then, I called Marcus at Silverwood. Marcus, we have confirmation. An outside consultant was responsible. We have him in custody. We're moving fast to restore trust. His reply was measured relief. Adriana, I'm relaying the news to our partners. Stay that course. This will blow over with clear communication and transparency. I closed my eyes, relief mingling with fatigue. The storm had battered us, but we had weathered it once more. As night fell over Nairobi, I looked out at the city lights, reminders of the communities we served. I whispered to myself. They tried to bury us, but they forgot. Our roots run deep. Tomorrow, we plant the seeds for our next bloom. And with that resolve, I prepared for the challenges ahead, rebuilding trust with investors, guiding our expansion, and ensuring that no obstacle, malicious or accidental, could ever block our access again. Dawn broke over the Mediterranean coast as I landed in Valencia, Spain, the city chosen for our next expansion pilot, an emerging hub of small wineries and artisanal producers in need of microloans. My mind was still buzzing from the whirlwind of Nairobi's crises, sabotage, phishing, and the specter of corporate espionage. Yet the stakes here were different. New regulatory environments, unfamiliar languages, and the crucial task of translating our P2P model into a European context. I stepped off the plane, suitcase in hand, and felt the cool sea breeze. In the airport lounge, I opened my laptop to catch up on overnight developments. Silverwood Partners had circulated our press release about Malik's arrest, and investor sentiment remained cautiously optimistic. The platform's public trust metrics showed a slight uptick, as news outlets credited our swift action and transparency. Still, I knew the damage was not yet fully undone. Perception lagged behind reality. By mid-morning, I arrived at our Valencia co-working campus, where a team of local operations managers waited. Among them was Sarah Martinez, a fintech veteran specializing in EU financial compliance. She greeted me with a firm handshake and a quick assessment of her recent report. Adriana, the Spanish regulators have flagged our loan terms for review, she said as we walked through the campus courtyard. They want clarification on interest rate disclosures and data privacy under GDPR. We'll need to adjust our UI and legal language accordingly. I nodded, mentally recalibrating. Let's convene a small task force, legal, product, and UX. We'll draft the changes today and submit the revised terms by end of week. Meanwhile, I'll meet with regional producers in La Rioja to share our roadmap and address concerns firsthand. We settled into a bright conference room, the walls covered with sketches of interface revisions and sticky notes in Spanish and English. Sarah led the discussion, outlining timelines and compliance checklists. I contributed user perspective insights, ensuring our language remained clear and accessible without sacrificing legal precision. Later that afternoon, I drove north to La Rioja, the renowned wine region, whose undulating vineyards stretched like emerald waves under the sun. I had arranged a series of small gatherings, meet and greets, where local vintners, many running family estates for generations, could learn about our microloan options tailored for seasonal production cycles. In the first winery, I met Miguel Alonso, a fourth-generation winemaker whose boutique label had just struggled to secure a €10,000 loan for new barrels. As we strolled between oak casks, the scent of fermenting grapes in the air, he explained the challenges of traditional lending: rigid approval processes, collateral requirements unsuited for winemaking assets, and inflexible repayment schedules misaligned with harvest revenues. I listened intently and then showed him our customized term structure, a 3-phase repayment plan peaking after harvest, with a built-in grace period for unexpected weather-related delays. We understand your cash flow isn't monthly rent. It's tied to seasons and sales, I said, tapping my tablet to reveal sample projections. His face lit up. This could change everything for my estate, but I need assurance this will comply with our local regulations. I nodded. I'm working directly with the Spanish regulator's office. We'll secure a special compliance exemption for seasonal enterprises, guaranteed by our local partner bank. He smiled and extended his hand. Where do I sign? That evening, as the sun dipped below the vineyard horizon, I drove back to the city, contemplating the day's victories and fresh challenges. Navigating the EU's regulatory landscape required agility, but it also underscored our platform's core value: flexibility rooted in local understanding. Back at the co-working campus, I gathered my laptop and headed to the rooftop terrace overlooking the Turia Gardens. I dialed Marcus at Silverwood. I wanted to update you, I began as the city lights glowed softly. We've secured market interest in Valencia, and our compliance adjustments are underway. We'll submit the revised terms by Friday. He congratulated me on the progress, yet his tone carried a note of caution. Adriana, expansion is going smoothly, but remember, rapid scaling invites new vulnerabilities. Keep your security team on high alert, especially with the upcoming GDPR audits. I assured him we had strengthened our defenses and were implementing routine penetration tests across all markets. As I hung up, I realized the battle for trust and growth would be relentless across time zones and jurisdictions. I closed my eyes, recalling the words I whispered on Nairobi's rooftop: we rise, always. Today it meant confronting regulatory hurdles and adapting to new landscapes, and tomorrow it would mean whatever challenge awaited, be it digital sabotage, market skepticism, or the next frontier of financial inclusion. I opened my notebook and wrote, Part 11, Valencia, Turning Vineyards into Ventures. Then I sketched the roadmap for the EU rollout, underlining every checkpoint with determination. The world was watching, and our mission to democratize capital was far from over. We would prove that no barrier, geographic, legal, or malicious, could block our access. As I packed up my things, I felt the familiar thrill of the unknown ahead. Because for Lend Forward, every market was a new pitch, every community a new partner, and every dawn a fresh chance to rewrite the rules of finance. The morning after our Valencia launch, I woke to a steady patter of rain on the rooftop terrace of my apartment. The clouds had followed me south, as if determined not to let Lend Forward escape scrutiny. I sipped coffee slowly, reviewing the to-do list I'd left myself the night before: finalize regulatory amendments with our EU Council, prepare talking points for an upcoming roadshow in London, and convene a cross-functional team to blueprint our Series B strategy. At 9 sharp, I arrived at the co-working campus and headed straight to the compliance war room, where Sarah Martinez and Thibault Legrand, our newly hired French regulatory specialist, were combing through the latest feedback from the Spanish regulator. They sat amid a sea of printouts and open laptops, the tension in the room palpable. Sarah, Thibault, I greeted them. How's the revised disclosure language coming along? Sarah looked up, her brow furrowed. We've narrowed the interest rate disclosure to a single dynamic banner that updates based on user input, but we need legal sign-off on the GDPR consent layers. Thibault's working on that part. Thibault slid over a draft of the new consent modal. We've added a tiered consent flow. Core data processing is opt-out by default, but secondary analytics require explicit opt-in. It aligns with Article 6 of GDPR. I scanned the flowchart. Looks solid, but let's run it by our external counsel. I'll schedule a call today. Once they sign off, roll it out to beta users for feedback. We spent the next 2 hours iterating language, trimming ambiguity, and adding tooltip explanations to each clause. By afternoon, the revised terms were ready for submission. As I prepared to leave Valencia for London, I fielded a text from Marcus. Congrats on the submission. London Roadshow dates confirmed. We kick off next Monday. You ready for the spotlight? My mind shifted gears. London meant UK regulators, VCs, and a media landscape that thrived on drama. I replied, always. I'll see you there. At the airport, I boarded the early flight to London with Elias and Priya in tow. Priya had been working around the clock to harden our EU security posture, another crucial step before we expanded beyond Spain. Elias, meanwhile, was finalizing the forensic report on Malik's sabotage, preparing to present our findings to the Silverwood board. Touching down at Heathrow, I was greeted by crisp air and a sense of urgency. We had 3 days to secure meetings with 10 potential investors, attend a fintech showcase at Canary Wharf, and prepare for an on-camera interview with Innovate UK's flagship program. My schedule was a blur of bullet-pointed notes and tight windows between transport and pitch prep. That evening, we held a rehearsal in our temporary office overlooking the Thames. The mirrored conference room felt glamorous, but I applied the same ruthless scrutiny to my slides as I had in Nairobi and Valencia. I refined my opening story. A single mother in Nairobi, a winemaker in La Rioja, and now a craftsman in the Kent countryside, all connected by Lend Forward's lifeline. The narrative thread was global and personal, and it needed to resonate. On Monday morning, I stepped onto the stage at the FinTech Showcase, a sea of curious faces and flashing cameramen. I launched into my pitch. At Lend Forward, we believe that access to capital shouldn't be a privilege of geography or income. It should be a right, extended to every entrepreneur with a dream. The audience leaned in as I walked them through our trajectory. Barroom pitch in London, Series A in New York, microloan triumph in Nairobi, EU compliance in Valencia, and now a chance to scale to North America and beyond. The Q&A that followed was relentless. Queries on risk modeling, regulatory arbitrage, exit strategy. I fielded each with data-backed confidence, weaving in anecdotes of borrowers taught financial literacy skills that transformed their businesses and households. As I wrapped, the room erupted in applause. Several VCs approached me afterward, business cards extended like lifelines. One particularly enthusiastic investor from a Toronto-based fund asked about our roadmap for Canada. I promised a detailed proposal, knowing we'd need a localized strategy mindful of provincial lending regulations. That afternoon, during a break in the roadshow, I met with Marcus and Silverwood's UK partner at a riverside cafe. They were bullish on our progress, but cautious about timing. Series B should close by Q1, Marcus advised. But let's not rush. We need clear milestones, revenue targets, user growth metrics, regulatory footholds. I nodded, acknowledging the balance between urgency and prudence. Back on the road to our next VC meeting, Priya whispered details about an attempted penetration test by an unknown actor targeting our cloud repository. Despite our stringent protocols, the phishing aftermath still cast a shadow. That night, in a dimly lit hotel suite, I drafted our Series B deck, market opportunity in North America, detailed P&L forecasts, tech roadmap, and a slide dedicated to security hardening measures. I wanted investors to see that we'd learned from adversity and emerged stronger. But as I hit save, my screen flickered, once, twice, and then went black. The power had cut out. My heart pounded. This was the final indicator. No matter how far we scaled, Sabotage trailed us like a specter. I powered through on mobile, drafting a quick message to Elias. Meet at the ops room in 10, code red. He replied instantly, on my way. Hotel says power likely a building issue, I'll check. I closed my eyes, summoning the calm that had carried me from ghosted investor meetings to packed conference halls. The next day's pitches in London could not be derailed by yet another outage. I whispered to the silent room, no matter the darkness, we find the spark. As I gathered my things, I realized that the greatest battles weren't fought in boardrooms or bars. They were fought in moments when the lights went out, and the world expected you to shine anyway. And I was more determined than ever to light the way forward. Cliffhanger, asterisk. The door to the operations room creaked open, and Elias stepped in, face pale. It's not the hotel, he said, voice low. Our data center reported a lockdown. No inbound or outbound traffic. Someone's cut us off at the source. It's not the hotel, Elias said, voice low. Our data center reported a lockdown. No inbound or outbound traffic. Someone's cut us off at the source. I felt my heart seize in that instant, as though the ground beneath me had fractured. A lockdown at the primary data center meant our entire platform, loan origination, repayments, user dashboards, was offline. Thousands of users across 3 continents were suddenly cut off from their funds, their critical lifelines. The gravity of the moment crashed over me, raw and suffocating. Show me, I ordered, striding to the center of the operations room. Elias hooked his laptop into the massive monitor on the wall. Lines of code and red warning banners flooded the screen. Connections severed, authentication requests failing, heartbeats dropped. The server room's ignition logs confirmed it. Power had been deliberately cut to the data center's network switches, and a digital kill switch activated the lockdown protocol. How long has it been like this? I asked. 17 minutes, he replied. I've tried override commands. The secondary backup cluster in Eastern Europe is failing to sync. They're stuck in quarantine mode. Everything's in lockdown. No one can break through. I swallowed, my mind racing. The ramifications were immediate. Borrowers waiting on desktops, loan disbursements halted, replication windows missed. Worst yet, even we as founders were locked out, unable to correct the breach or reassure investors in real time. Have you alerted the Silverwood partners? I asked. Elias hesitated, then nodded. I pinged Marcus 30 seconds ago, no response yet. Time stretched. I turned to Priya, who stood at her station, phone in hand. Priya, get me our cloud service provider's emergency hotline, and open a separate channel with our cybersecurity firm. We need triage protocols now. She tapped furiously, her face pale. I'm on it. Good, I said, planting my hands firmly on the table. Elias, gather me the last 7 days of access logs, any anomalous privilege escalations. Priya, define every vector they could have used. Physical sabotage, hardware backdoor, API vulnerability. They moved in unison, their training kicking in. I felt a flicker of pride amid the panic. My team was disciplined, focused. But as the minutes passed, the silence from Silverwood weighed heavy. Marcus was my anchor, the partner who'd seen me at my most vulnerable and still believed. If we couldn't speak to him, our lifeline to fresh capital, our buffer to weather this storm, would fray. Finally, my phone buzzed, a message from Marcus. On it. Calling now, I answered, voice terse. Adriana, I just got to my weekend retreat. No cell service inside. What's happening? I briefed him rapidly. Data center lockdown. No inbound or outbound. Platform offline. We're on crisis response. I need your word that Silverwood is with us on this. His voice crackled. Lend forward is my conviction. I'm dispatching our on-call engineers to the hosting facility. And I'll call the cloud provider's CEO personally. We'll restore service. You have my word. Relief floodgates opened. Thank you. Keep me posted. I hung up and turned to Elias and Priya. Silverwood's on board, but every second counts. Let's get the wheels turning. Over the next hour, our war room blurred into a frenzy of action. Phone calls to the data center operations manager, verifying physical security breaches, emergency credentials revoked and rotated, a temporary redirect of network traffic to our secondary cluster in Singapore. priority escalation requests to our cloud provider's executive support team. By late afternoon, we achieved partial restoration, core authentication services flickered back online, and we managed to reroute user traffic to the Singapore cluster. But performance was degraded, latency spikes, timeouts, upload errors, enough to frustrate users and risk reputational damage. I gathered the team for a quick huddle. "Listen up," I said, voice strong. "We have 90 minutes to stabilize the system to at least 70% capacity. Then we issue a transparent status update to our users, explain what happened, and apologize for the disruption. Then we escalate forensic analysis. No spin, just facts, timelines, and a plan of action." They nodded, determination sparking in their eyes. I retreated to my office and drafted the user update. Dear Lend Forward community. Earlier today, an unauthorized incident at our primary data center triggered a security lockdown, temporarily interrupting service. Our team worked around the clock to reroute traffic and restore critical functions. As of now, most users can log in and view their accounts. However, you may experience delays in processing. We deeply apologize for the disruption and are taking the following actions. 1. Fall back to Singapore cluster, active. 2. 72-hour full system diagnostic, underway. 3. No user funds at risk, capital held securely. 4. Post-mortem report, to be published in 5 business days. Thank you for your patience and trust. Adriana Quinn, CEO. I hit send and sent the same notice to Silverwood and our board. Moments later, I returned to the war room. The metrics on the dashboard showed 65% uptime, edging toward our target. Elias reported that the access logs indicated unauthorized remote wiping attempts, suggesting the saboteur tried to erase evidence while locking us out. Priya confirmed that the primary vulnerability was a firmware backdoor and a batch of newly installed network switches, components we'd procured through a third-party reseller recommended by Silverwood's procurement team. My stomach sank. The backdoor had been present in our network for weeks, waiting to be activated. We'd inadvertently introduced a Trojan horse into our most critical infrastructure. I took a deep breath. We need to trace the reseller chain. And we need to notify our compliance officers. This has regulatory implications across every jurisdiction we operate in. But first, we lock down the rest of our hardware. Priya, pull all network switch firmware for analysis. Elias, audit every vendor relationship for similar risks. I'll handle the communication with our regulator contacts in the US, UK, and EU. As the team sprang into action, I felt the familiar weight of leadership settle on my shoulders. The stakes had never been higher. User trust, investor confidence, the livelihoods of thousands. Yet in that moment, I knew that this crisis would define us more than any successful pitch, any funding round. It would prove whether our mission could endure the darkest sabotage. Night fell over the Singapore cluster's data center as I stared at the screen. Lines of code streaming, clusters syncing, error rates dropping. The platform was alive again, flickering like a phoenix reborn. But the battle lines were clear. This was war in the digital age, and we had no choice but to fight. As I left the office, I paused on the rooftop terrace. The city lights reflected in the glass of my phone screen. I opened my notes and scribbled a single line. Part 13, The Locked Gates, When Data Becomes a Battleground. Then I looked up at the stars obscured by city glow and whispered, they can cut the lines, they can plant their back doors, but they will not hold us down. Tomorrow we would expose the backdoor's origin, hold the reseller accountable, and write the postmortem that would restore faith. The world would see that Lend Forward was built not just on code and capital, but on resilience and an unwavering commitment to every user waiting for their next loan. The victorious hum of the Singapore cluster was a fragile triumph. We had clawed back control of our platform, but the revelation of a firmware backdoor seeded by a third-party reseller left a bitter aftertaste. I spent the first morning in the Part 14 chapter, hunched over a secure video call with our compliance officers in the US, UK, and EU. Their voices crackled through the distortion of transatlantic lines as they grilled me on breach protocols, risk mitigation, and public disclosure schedules. We require a full vendor due diligence report by tomorrow, said Rachel Green, head of Silverwood's compliance committee. Her tone was courteous but unyielding. Any delay could trigger regulatory penalties. I nodded into the camera. Understood. My team and I are already auditing every networking component, verifying supply chain integrity, and engaging with legal counsel to prepare our post-mortem. You'll have the preliminary report in 6 hours, final by 24. The call ended, and I allowed myself a moment to inhale deeply. The weight of all those users, barbers in Nairobi, winemakers in Rioja, craftsmen in Kent, rested on our ability to navigate legal minefields and technical complexities without losing focus on our mission. At 11 a.m., I joined Elias, Priya, and Sarah in our war room to review the vendor audit. Whiteboards were littered with supply chain diagrams, color-coded by risk level. Each line represented weeks of research: manufacturer IDs, shipping logs, component serial numbers, and the murky trail of reseller intermediaries. According to the audit, Elias began tapping the board. The compromised switches came from Nexus Tech Solutions, which sourced them from a subsidiary of Vertex Electronics. Vertex's records show they imported a small batch from an unverified subcontractor in Southeast Asia, a supplier without proper certification. Priya scrolled through chains of emails. They used generic part numbers to disguise the backdoor firmware, slipping them into larger shipments. Our procurement team at Silverwood recommended Nexus Tech, but due diligence fell short on subcontractor vetting. I traced a finger along the diagram. We need to notify all customers who deployed similar hardware, anyone in our network path. And we need to terminate agreements with Nexus Tech. Sarah, draft our vendor termination notice and notify legal. Priya, issue firmware integrity checks to every node. Elias, cross-validate our core codebase against known backdoor signatures. They moved with precision. I admired their focus, each action a stitch in the fabric of our recovery. By mid-afternoon, I convened a broader leadership meeting. Regional leads joined from Jakarta, Cape Town, London, and Toronto via secure conference line. Thank you all for joining on such short notice, I began. We've identified and contained the firmware backdoor. Our platform is operational, but we must continue rigorous integrity checks. I will personally oversee compliance disclosures and our vendor remediation process. Heads nodded, relief and determination shining through pixelated screens. In the quiet that followed, I seized a brief moment to call my mother, her voice a soothing anchor. Mom, I said, voice soft, I wanted to tell you I hit a milestone today. We're stabilizing the system after a crisis. It's been intense. She chuckled. Darling, that sounds like life in your world. But remember to rest and trust your team. You've built something special. Her words warmed me. I realized how far I'd come from that anxious 24-year-old, begging for scraps of feedback in boardroom lobbies. Now I was orchestrating crisis responses across continents. That evening, I parked myself in a quiet corner of our London office, a cup of Earl Grey in hand, and drafted the executive summary of our post-mortem. It detailed the root cause analysis, vendor chain failures, immediate containment measures, and the roadmap for strengthening our hardware security posture. Mandatory certification of all future components, regular penetration testing by independent firms, and an internal security champion program to train every engineer in hardware-level vigilance. As the words flowed onto the screen, I felt a familiar energy, the electric thrill of turning adversity into architecture. I saved the document and forwarded it to Silverwood, copying our board and legal counsel. But before I could exhale, my phone buzzed with a calendar invite titled Series B Pitch, Boardroom 5B, Canary Wharf, 9 a.m. The stark simplicity of it jolted me. The next day, at the heart of London's financial district, I would stand before a panel of potential investors and ask them to believe in Len Forward's resilience, vision, and capacity to not just weather storms, but harness them. I closed my eyes, recalling my first pitch in that dimly lit bar, ad hoc, scrappy, hopeful. This pitch would be different. Every slide forged in crisis response, every statistic tempered by real-world proof of our adaptability. I answered the calendar invite. Then I texted Marcus. Pitch book ready. Tomorrow we show them how we rise. See you at 8:30 a.m. for final prep. His reply came within seconds. I'll be there. Let's write history. The night deepened around me, and I realized how all our past trials converged on this moment. The series of sabotage attempts, the regulatory battles, the global rollouts, all pointed to a singular truth. Lend Forward wasn't just a fintech platform. It was a movement rooted in the conviction that access to capital should be a birthright, not a privilege. I powered down the laptop, allowing myself a moment of calm before the storm. Outside, London's skyline glittered with ambition and risk. And as I turned off the lights in our office, I whispered to the empty room, they built barricades, but tomorrow we show them how to break through. They built barricades, but tomorrow we show them how to break through. I woke before dawn again, the anticipation of the Series B pitch weaving through my dreams as restless threads. The Canary Wharf skyline glowed through my hotel suite's floor-to-ceiling windows, glass towers rising like sentinels guarding the Thames. Today I would stand in Boardroom 5B and ask for the capital that would carry Lend Forward into its next chapter. 4 continents. 3 crises. 1 vision. My alarm buzzed at 5:30 a.m. I slid out of bed, the city still hushed beneath an early fog. In the mirrored bathroom, I splashed cold water on my face, tracing every line of fatigue. I pressed my palm to the glass, inhaling the crisp, air-cooled stillness. There would be no room for doubt. Not today. Over a dark roast in the hotel lobby, Marcus and I ran through the pitch one final time. He sat across from me, suit crisp, posture taut with solidarity. Remember, he said quietly, they know your numbers. What they want is your story. How you turned adversity into architecture. Lead with resilience, back it up with data, and close with vision. You're not just raising funds, you're rallying allies. I nodded, sipping my coffee. In my laptop bag lay the deck. 30 slides meticulously ordered, growth trajectory charts, geospatial heat maps of loan deployments, compliance checkpoints in each jurisdiction, security incident timelines, and the highlight reel of user testimonials. But beneath every visual lay the blood and sweat of our journey. Barroom pitches and boardroom battles, sabotage and survival. At 7 a.m., the 3 of us took the rail shuttle to Canary Wharf, the train's fluorescent lighting reflecting on polished floors. I reviewed notes on my phone. Emphasized 3.7x revenue growth year over year. Note 94% repayment rate across emerging markets. Cite our vendor remediation protocol. Mention Series A exit potential within 24 months. The elevator doors slid open at the 34th floor. A marble lobby led to a bank of glass-paneled corridors. We paused before Boardroom 5B, a frosted glass door etched with the Silverwood Partners logo. I inhaled deeply, tasting the undertone of anticipation. Inside, the panel sat behind a long conference table. A circle of high-backed leather chairs gripped their occupants. Silverwood's partners. Marcus Delaney at center, flanked by 2 seasoned investment directors, and representatives from 2 strategic growth funds, one from Toronto, one from Dubai. I counted 10 faces, all reading our final slide. Series B, $50 million at $200 million post-money. I stepped forward, planting my laptop on the table's edge. My slides appeared on the wall-length screen. An image of a single mother in Lagos cradling her baby. The tagline, "Every loan is a promise." Good morning, I began, voice steady. I'm Adriana Quinn, CEO of Lend Forward. Today you're not just investing in a fintech startup. You're investing in the belief that every entrepreneur, regardless of location, background, or capital cushion, deserves access to opportunity. Over the past 2 years, we've validated that belief with real people, real impact, and measurable returns. The first section laid out our global expansion, active operations in 8 countries, 8 pilot markets launched in 12 months, and 3 regulatory frameworks successfully navigated. The second segment dove into product evolution, the peer-to-peer lending module, SMS-based applications, and the adaptive credit scoring AI trained on local behavioral data. At slide 15, I paused on our security posture. A timeline of the phishing breach, the insider attack, traced to Marisol's compromised credentials, the media center blackout, and the firmware backdoor crisis. Each bullet pointed to a lesson learned. Each annotation to policy strengthened. When we discovered the firmware backdoor last quarter, I said, it was a crossroads. We could have hidden it, hoped investors didn't notice, and patched quietly. Instead, we chose transparency. We notified regulators in every jurisdiction. We conducted an exhaustive vendor audit and implemented mandatory third-party certification for all hardware. Our community, and our investors, deserve full accountability. I saw nods around the table. One of the Toronto investors, a woman with silver-streaked hair, leaned forward. Your transparency is admirable, but it carries risk, she said. How do we know this won't recur? What's to say the next backdoor isn't already implanted? I welcomed the question. We've instituted a multi-layered security framework, quarterly penetration testing by 3 independent firms, a security champion program with certified leads in each office, and a real-time anomaly detection dashboard monitored 24/7. Additionally, our board of directors now includes an independent cybersecurity advisor, Angela Ramirez, formerly of NATO's Cyber Defense Center. A murmur of approval rippled through the room. I clicked forward to Angela's bio and photo, a stern woman in a suit, arms folded, experience spanning governmental and corporate defense. Next, I unveiled our financial model, project revenue growing from $25 million to $110 million over 3 years, with EBITDA margins improving from -12% to 18% by year 4. Our user acquisition cost had dropped by 21% since Series A, thanks to strategic partnerships with mobile network operators. Lifetime value had surged accordingly. The Dubai Fund's representative, a younger man, with a neatly trimmed beard, steepled his fingers. Your projections are robust, but they hinge on regulatory stability. If one government changes its lending laws mid-implementation, can your framework adapt without derailing growth? I switched to a world map highlighting regulatory risk across each region. We've built modular compliance layers, per market, per regulation. Our platform's rule engine can toggle terms, interest caps, and consent flows dynamically. We perform quarterly compliance audits with local counsel. And if a jurisdiction imposes an outright ban, we have a redeployment reserve, technical and financial, to pivot within 90 days. The panel exchanged looks. Marcus gave me a small nod of encouragement. In the final segment, I told their story, not mine, of 3 entrepreneurs, a barber in Lagos, a winemaker in Rioja, and a craftsman in Kent. Their voices, recorded in short video snippets, played on a split screen. Each testified to how Lend Forward's capital had turned hesitation into momentum. When the video ended, silence settled. I stepped back, scanning the faces. That's why we're here today, I said softly. To raise $50 million that will fuel the next wave of microloan impact across North America and Southeast Asia. To bring hope to another 100,000 entrepreneurs. To prove that access to capital can and must be universal. The chairwoman cleared her throat. Thank you, Adriana. We'll deliberate and reconvene at 3 p.m. Expect our decision then. As I stepped out of boardroom 5B, my knees felt unsteady. The hardest part was over, but the final judgment still awaited. I walked down the corridor, throat tight with relief and dread. In the lobby, I found Elias and Priya waiting. You were incredible, Elias said, handing me a bottle of water. They were hanging on every word. Priya nodded. You turned every crisis into proof of resilience. This is what they need to see. I managed a weary smile. Now we wait. And hope that the story we told today becomes the capital that writes our next chapter. I checked my watch. 2:03 p.m., 2 hours until verdict. I found a bench overlooking the docks, fingers drumming against the metal. The London air was brisk, carrying the faint scent of salt and diesel. My phone buzzed. An email from Silverwood. Subject line, thank you for your presentation. But no verdict. I closed my eyes, letting the tide of emotions wash over me. Fear, hope, determination. A single thought crystallized. Whatever the outcome, we had defied every gate, every wall, every hand that tried to push us out. And now, we stood on the brink of something greater than capital, confirmation that our mission transcended borders and barriers. The clock in my mind ticked down. 1 hour left. The wait felt endless. As the clock on the dockside bench ticked toward 3 p.m., I closed my eyes and leaned back, recalling every moment of the pitch, the hush of the room, the flicker of screens, the weight of those faces as I laid bare our vision and our scars. Elena, the Toronto investor, had squeezed my hand before I left the table. Faisal from Dubai had tapped his notes thoughtfully. Each gesture had been a clue, a sign, but none as definitive as the official verdict I was about to receive. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I drew it out, heart pounding, and saw an email from Silverwood Partners marked Urgent, Series B Decision. I tapped it open and scanned the lines, each word igniting my chest like fire. Adriana, we are immensely proud to partner with Lend Forward on this journey. The board has unanimously approved leading your Series B round at $50 million on the terms discussed. Funds will be transferred to your account by next week, and the term sheet will follow for signature. Congratulations. For a moment, the world around me blurred. I read it again. Unanimously approved. Series B, lead by Silverwood. $50 million. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. My hands shook as I showed the email to Elias and Priya, who crowded around my phone. Elias let out a whoop, and Priya's eyes glistened. We hugged, the kind of embrace that released years of tension and built-up pressure. But celebration felt surreal in the muted hustle of Canary Wharf. I allowed myself a moment, a stolen triumph, before composing a brief reply to Marcus. Thank you, we're honored and ready. Let's schedule the signing and kick off work. Adriana. His prompt response popped up. I'll coordinate with legal and send over the documents. Great work today. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and looked out at the river, its waters reflecting the late afternoon sun. This victory was sweet, but I knew every dollar would carry expectations and every clause a responsibility. We'd won access to capital that had eluded me for years, but now the true test began, turning promise into performance, dreams into realities. That evening, we hosted a small gathering for Silverwood's team and our internal leadership group at a private room in a sleek restaurant overlooking the Thames. As we clinked glasses of sparkling wine, I caught Marcus's eye and raised a toast. To resilience, to transparency, and to every person whose faith in us made this possible. Here's to the next chapter. The room echoed with applause and laughter, lightness at last after months of siege, and I let it wash over me. But, as our guests departed and the restaurant staff cleared plates, I found a quiet corner to reflect. My mind circled back to the note I'd scribbled earlier. Root cause, resilience, roadmap. Each crisis we'd overcome had sharpened our strategy. More robust security layers, dynamic regulatory modules, and an unshakable culture of honesty. We had built not just a fintech platform, but an ecosystem designed to withstand adversity. Yet I couldn't shake a tingle of apprehension. The world was watching us now. Regulators in 3 continents, investors with deep pockets, competitors lurking for any sign of weakness. The next months would demand flawless execution, scaling operations, hiring talent, launching new features, and monitoring global risk in real time. Back in my hotel suite, I opened my laptop and drafted the internal announcement to the entire company. Team Lend Forward. Today, we closed our Series B round with Silverwood Partners, raising $50 million to fuel our next phase of growth. This milestone is a testament to your dedication and the trust of our global community. With these funds, we will expand into North America, accelerate product development, and strengthen our security and compliance frameworks. Thank you for persevering through challenges and embodying our mission every day. The journey ahead will be demanding, but together we will continue to break down barriers and unlock opportunity for entrepreneurs everywhere. I hit send and watched Slack flood with messages of congratulations and pride, but as the digital applause rolled in, my gaze fell on the desk lamp's reflection in the window. The faint silhouette of my own face stared back, determined but wary. I stood and walked to the window, London's lights shimmering like constellations. I whispered to the night, "We've raised the capital. Now we build the future." But even as I spoke, a new alert pinged on my phone. A data anomaly flagged in our North American test servers. An unexpected spike in failed transactions and flagged user accounts. The timing was uncanny, just as we prepared to launch our pilot in Ontario. I opened the analytics dashboard and watched lines of red errors bloom across the map. Users in Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, all experiencing timeouts and errors at precisely 2:14 a.m. Eastern Time. My breath caught. Months of crisis management had taught me that attacks could come from any vector. As I stared at the screen, I felt the familiar rush of adrenaline and resolve. "Not now," I whispered. "Not when we've just won." I grabbed my phone and tapped Marcus's number. "We've got a new issue, transaction errors in Canada. Can we assemble the crisis team again?" His immediate reply came, "On it. Let me rally our North America tech leads." I squared my shoulders. The levees of capital had held, but the flood of adversity was relentless. I realized then that this story, our story, was far from over. Each chapter closed, only to set the stage for the next conflict, the next opportunity to prove that our promise was more than pitch decks and term sheets. As I dashed from the restaurant into the London night, I felt that same spark of defiance that had driven me from silent boardrooms to packed bars. We had unlocked access once. Now we would unlock it again, on our own terms, in every market we entered. But with a $50 million war chest and the weight of the world's expectations on my shoulders, I knew the path forward would demand everything I had, and perhaps more. And as I rounded the corner toward the office, one thought pulsed through my mind. The next storm is coming. We may have raised the wind, but now we must learn to sail. I stood at the edge of the open plan operations floor, watching the glow of dozens of screens flicker as our North American cluster groaned under the pressure of failed transactions. The anomalies that sprang up last night now threatened to cascade into a full-scale outage at the worst possible moment, just as our Toronto and Vancouver pilots were set to go live. Pulling a fresh cup of coffee from the communal station, I took a deep breath and squared my shoulders. Around me, the Lend Forward team, hardened by months of crisis, moved with urgent precision. Engineers tracing transaction logs, operations leads fielding calls from anxious borrowers, legal counsel drafting incident reports for Canadian regulators. At the center of the room, Elias and Priya huddled over the central monitoring console. I closed the distance between us, the click of my heels echoing off the polished concrete floor. "What's the latest?" I asked, voice steady. Elias pointed at the screen. We traced the failed transactions to a distributed denial-of-service attack targeting our payment gateway API. It's hitting Vancouver clusters hardest, flooding the endpoints with invalid requests and exhausting our rate limits. Priya added, "We've initiated our DDoS mitigation protocols, rerouting traffic through our scrubbing centers and spinning up additional edge servers in Seattle. But it's a temporary fix. We need to identify the source and cut them off at the root." I studied their faces, exhaustion etched in dark circles, determination shining in their eyes. This was the cost of resilience, perpetual conflict, constant vigilance, but also the thrill of the fight, the rush of triumph when a barrier was broken. "All right," I said, "engage the scrubbing centers fully. Prioritize the live loans, transactions for borrowers whose businesses can't wait. Flag any requests over $1,000 for manual review so they pass through. Then rotate our API keys and notify our security partners in Silicon Valley to trace the attack vectors." They nodded and dispersed. I grabbed my laptop, knowing that as CEO, I had to be visible on multiple fronts. I opened a direct chat with Marcus at Silverwood. "Greater than Adriana, we're under DDoS right now, targeting our North America launch. We're mitigating but need backup timeline and temp liquidity buffer for potential compensation requests." Seconds later, his reply popped up. "Greater than Marcus on it. I'll loop in our fintech insurance and legal. Keep me updated on timeline to stabilization. You're handling this perfectly." I exhaled, heart pounding with relief at his support. Then I tapped a message to our communications lead. Draft an update for Canadian borrowers apologizing for delays, assuring them funds were secure, and transactions would resume imminently. Stepping away from the commotion, I found a quiet corner in the hallway and closed my eyes. I thought back to the day I first pitched my fintech idea in that bar, scrambling to be heard, desperate for entry. Tonight, I was under siege from hackers, regulators, and never-ending technical disasters. But I'd come far. I'd built a team that moved like clockwork in the face of chaos. I opened my notebook, still thick with scribbled maps, timelines, and urgent bullet points, and wrote, Part 17, When Silence Breaks, Defending the Digital Frontier. The words felt heavier than usual, laden with the knowledge that the next hours would define our reputation in North America. A sudden ping on my phone broke my reverie, a notification from our cloud provider. Traffic is beginning to normalize. Edge servers are breathing. I returned to the operations room to see graphs trending towards stability. Status? I asked Elias. Scrubbing's working. Error rate down from 35% to 8% and falling. Seattle nodes absorbing most of the junk. We should be back at sub 1% within the hour. Priya tapped at her keyboard. We've traced the primary attack IPs to a botnet farm in Eastern Europe. We're filing takedown requests with the hosting providers now. Quote, I allowed myself a small smile. Good work. Let's keep monitoring for any resilience loops. Once we're stable, schedule a full post-mortem and update all investors and regulators. As the team rallied around the recovery, I tuned into the global clock. Vancouver's dawn, Toronto's morning, London's afternoon. It felt like our world had become a spinning wheel of time zones, each requiring our presence and our vigilance. By late morning, transactions were flowing again. The operations floor buzzed with cautious optimism, the team exchanging relieved glances. I stood at the front, addressing everyone. Team, you've done it again. We weathered the storm and kept our promise to borrowers. Let's keep this momentum going. Security, compliance, and empathy for our users. Every time we hit a crisis, we learn, we adapt, and we emerge stronger. A round of applause followed, but my mind was already on the next steps. Post-mortem analysis, reinforcing our global DDoS defenses, and preparing for the official launch event in Toronto next week. I slipped out to the rooftop terrace for a moment of quiet. The city's skyline stretched before me, a lattice of steel and glass punctuated by the occasional historic spire. I inhaled the cool air and imagined the hundreds of entrepreneurs in Canada awaiting their chance to pitch their dreams to lend forward. I closed my eyes and whispered to the night, We will not falter, we will not fail, we will defend this dream, no matter the cost. And as I stepped back into the building, I felt the familiar surge of purpose. The next frontier awaited, and we were ready to claim it. The morning air in Toronto tasted of possibility and frost. A subtle winter hush lay over the city, crisp light filtering through bare branches along King Street. I stepped out of the hotel with Elias, Priya, and our Canadian operations lead, Devin Harper, who had flown in overnight to stand alongside us for today's official Toronto launch. Across from me, the CN Tower loomed, its needle-piercing pale sky. Just 24 hours ago, our North American cluster had danced on the edge of collapse under a DDoS siege. Now, it hummed beneath the weight of thousands of new user registrations and loan applications. Today, we would celebrate our official entry into Canada, an announcement that would ripple through immigrant communities, side hustle startups, and small businesses alike. Our destination was the Mars Discovery District, a cavernous, former industrial complex reborn as a tech innovation hub. I had secured a prime slot in its atrium hall, glass ceiling overhead and polished concrete below. Chairs and cafe tables filled the space. Local press ready to record every word. A line of potential borrowers, bakers, hairdressers, app developers, snaked around the corner, clutching smartphones and hope. I took a deep breath as we scanned the setup. Lend forward banners featuring a maple leaf motif, booths staffed by bilingual volunteers explaining loan terms in English and French, demonstration kiosks with SMS-based interfaces for those without smartphones. Devin came over. Adriana, local regulators are here, Ontario Securities Commission representatives and industry association heads. I nodded. Good. I'll address them in my opening remarks, reaffirming our compliance and community focus. At 10 a.m., the atrium went silent. I took the stage, a sleek riser under bright spotlights. Camera operators angled for the perfect shot. My heart thrummed, not with fear, but with the steady pulse of purpose. Good morning, I began, voice carrying. I'm Adriana Quinn, co-founder and CEO of Lend Forward. It is my honor to bring our microloan platform to Canada, a country built on innovation, diversity, and the unshakable belief in the entrepreneurial spirit. I paused, meeting the eyes of the OSC representative. We are committed to operating within Canada's robust regulatory framework. In Ontario, we have secured exemptions that allow us to offer microloans under Schedule 2 of the Securities Act, and our lending rates comply with provincial caps. We've also built dynamic consent flows that let borrowers choose their data sharing levels under PIPEDA. Polite applause rippled through the room. I clicked to a slide showing a flowchart of our Canadian compliance model, complete with local council logos and OSC approval stamps. Beyond regulations, our mission is social, to extend capital to those underserved by traditional banking. Entrepreneurs, new Canadians, students, gig workers often face barriers when they apply for conventional loans. Lend Forward provides a bridge. Microloans as small as $500 Canadian, with tailored repayment plans aligned to real-world cash flow. Hands raised among the crowd. A young woman in a hijab stood at the microphone. I run a catering business for South Asian weddings. Can I get a loan for equipment rentals during peak season? I smiled. Absolutely. Our seasonal repayment plans adjust to your revenue cycles, so you can scale up for Ramadan, Vaisakhi, or Diwali events without strangling your cash flow. We also offer financial literacy modules in multiple languages to help you budget effectively. Her face lit up. That's amazing. Thank you. The question and answer session flowed naturally. Inquiries about interest rate caps, prepayment penalties, integration with Interac e-transfer. I fielded each with data-backed clarity, stressing our transparent fee structure. After 45 minutes, I closed. Today marks the beginning of our Canadian story. We invite you to visit our kiosks, speak with our team, and see firsthand how access to capital can empower your ambitions. Welcome to Lend Forward. The audience erupted in applause. We transitioned to demos and interviews. Local TV reporters gathered around for sound bites, while first-time borrowers lined up to scan QR codes and submit applications. I slipped behind a demo booth, handing an older gentleman a tablet. He tapped through the steps, eyes bright. Your user interface is so simple, he said. Back home in Pakistan, I could never access loans. Now I can start a taxi service here. He had a point. Lend Forward was not just bridging capital gaps. It was weaving the global diaspora into local economies. By noon, the event was in full swing. Devin reported over my shoulder. We've processed 50 applications and dispersed 3 loans this morning. Systems stable, no latency. I exhaled, relief and exhilaration mingling. But then Devin's eyes narrowed. There's a group over there, 2 men watching the back-end dashboard at the kiosk. One's on his phone, taking pictures. My stomach tightened. Yesterday's DDoS had originated from Eastern Europe. Could a new reconnaissance be underway? We'd anticipated adversaries attacking major events. I whispered to Priya, who tapped vigorously at her laptop, launching an IP watch on the kiosk network segments. Head off any unauthorized scans or dumps. If they probe too deep, throttle or block. She nodded, fingers dancing across the keyboard. I turned back to the crowd, smiling through the tension. The afternoon progressed, and the snapshot numbers trickled. 120 applications, 15 dispersed loans, 2 press interviews. It felt like victory. But I couldn't ignore the flicker of data scrutiny in that corner booth. As the event wound down, I gathered the core team for a quick debrief behind the stage. I'm proud of everyone today, I said. We've demonstrated our value in Canada. But Devin's spot check is concerning. I want Priya to run a forensic sweep of the kiosk logs and patch any vulnerabilities. Elias, debrief me on the DDoS mitigation outcomes. Let's ensure our event infrastructure is as bulletproof as our backend. They nodded. On it, they chorused. I stepped outside for a moment of fresh air, the late afternoon sun glinting off glass towers. A text bubbled on my phone. Marcus. Greater than incredible work today. Pacific investors want a meeting, 5 on Monday. Let's discuss expansion to BC and Alberta. My heart lifted. Our Canadian gambit had drawn new interest, confirmation that momentum was building. But then another ping, an email from our legal team in Ottawa. Subject, urgent, compliance review request. I opened it and skimmed. A provincial regulator had requested detailed loan-level data for a random audit, citing consumer protection concerns. We had complied with national regulators, but provincial oversight introduced new complexity. I closed my eyes and inhaled. We'd scaled faster than the nuances of Canada's patchwork of lending statutes could keep pace. But I'd built this engine to adapt. I drafted a quick reply. Understood. We'll provide the requested data immediately. Our team will reach out to your office within the hour with encrypted files and audit logs. I hit send and turned to Devon. We'll need to assemble our Canadian legal and compliance teams. This is standard in regulated markets. An opportunity to demonstrate our transparency. Can you coordinate? He nodded. Yes, I'll set up a secure channel with the provincial office now. I traced my gaze over the Toronto skyline, CN Tower, Rogers Centre, the endless grid of possibility. Each beacon represented entrepreneurs whose dreams depended on microloans and steadfast leadership. I pressed my hand over my heart and whispered to the wind. We brought our promise to Canada, now we prove it, one loan at a time. As I walked back inside to meet my team, I felt the familiar hum of purpose. The storm clouds of regulation and competition would gather. But I knew we had the vision, the resilience, and the grit to navigate any horizon. And so, with each step, I reaffirmed my vow. The next frontier awaited, and we would conquer it, together. Together, we had conquered one frontier after another. East Africa, Europe, North America. But the United States loomed as the ultimate proving ground. I flew from Toronto to New York on a red-eye, landing at JFK as dawn broke over the Hudson River, the city's skyline shimmering with promise and peril. The U.S. market was unrivaled in scale, but also saturated with competitors, mired in regulatory complexity, and notorious for fintech predators who preyed on vulnerabilities. I gathered my core team, Elias, Priya, Devon, and 2 new U.S. compliance leads, Amelia Rogers and Javier Morales, into a conference room at our temporary Soho office. The walls were adorned with maps of target states, California, Texas, Florida, and projected screens displayed compliance matrices for the CFPB, OCC, and various state lending laws. Here's where it gets tricky, I began, voice crisp with resolve. In the U.S., every state is its own country. We need to build a modular compliance engine that adapts to state-by-state requirements on interest caps, licensing, and consumer disclosures. Our pilot's going live in 3 weeks in Texas, but we have to ensure we won't violate any statutes in California or New York when we launch there in Q1. Amelia nodded, tapping her laptop. I flagged the Texas Finance Code Chapter 342 and the licensing requirements under the Texas Department of Banking. We'll need a consumer small-dollar lender license and must limit APR to 36%. I've drafted the initial application. I'll submit by EOD tomorrow. Javier chimed in. Florida's a bit thornier. Payday lending caps at 30% APR, but there's a separate installment loan statute with different requirements. We'll need to programmatically switch the interest logic based on the user's phone area code or GPS location. Priya leaned forward. Our U.S. cloud region is set up, and we've spun up servers in Ashburn. But data sovereignty demands that loan-level data stay within U.S. borders. We'll need to mirror our encryption keys locally and ensure our CSRs are physically present in the region. Elias raised a concern. Our negotiation with the major payment gateway is still pending for U.S. PCI compliance. We can't handle credit card transactions or ACH without their approval. I took a breath, summoning the focus that had carried me through every crisis. I'll call our contacts at the gateway this afternoon. We built resilience in every other area. We'll close this gap today. Meanwhile, Priya, run parallel tests on our new modular compliance engine with dummy data for all 50 states. Let's catch any errors now. By noon, we were in motion. Amelia filing licenses, Javier coding dynamic rate switches, Priya fortifying our US data pipeline, Elias testing API call flows. I sat in the left seat of a salsa-scented cafe on Houston Street, dialing the Payment Gateway's VP of Partnerships. Good afternoon, it's Adriana Quinn from Lend Forward, I began. We're expanding into the US and need priority access to your PCI Certified Tokenization API. Our Series B just closed, and we're on a tight timeline for our Texas pilot. His voice crackled with guarded interest. Adriana, congratulations on your Series B. We can expedite your account to Level 2 PCI scope, but we'll need an executive review and a letter of credit. Can your legal send over the necessary documents? I seized the moment. Consider it done. I'll email you in the next hour with a wire and the letter. And if there's any way to expedite the token provisioning, our pilot goes live next Monday. He paused, then offered a thin smile I could hear. We'll do our best. Expect my team on a call within 2 hours. I hung up, adrenaline surging. One by one, the pieces were falling into place, but in the US, speed was a double-edged sword. Every rushed integration risked a critical oversight. Back at the Soho office, I checked the clock. It was 2:14 p.m. Eastern Time, the same time yesterday when our Canadian cluster stumbled. A chill rippled down my spine. I logged into our US test server monitoring dashboard and frowned at the error graphs. A sudden spike in failed API authentications for test logins. Minutes ticked by, and the rate climbed. Not again, I muttered. I tapped Priya's shoulder. They're probing our US sandbox. Can you trace the origin? She typed fast. Looks like an automated credential stuffing attack from a range of Tor exit nodes. They're hitting our API keys repeatedly, likely trying to breach test accounts. It's low-grade but persistent. I nodded. Activate our credential protection layer, challenge every suspicious IP with MFA, and block those Tor nodes. Then rotate the sandbox keys. Let's starve them out. Priya executed the commands, and the error rate began to subside. I leaned back, adrenaline mixing with a grim smile. The same adversaries who attacked production were probing our staging environment now. I tapped my phone, sending a message to Marcus. US sandbox under attack, but we've patched. Down for 10 minutes, back online. Let's keep our verification plan flexible. His reply was succinct. Keep me posted. Onward. I checked in on the compliance engine. Javier's code was generating dynamic state rules flawlessly for Texas, California, and New York test cases. When I clicked into his sandbox logs, I saw firsthand how the system switched interest caps and disclosure language based on simulated user locales. Beautiful work, I told him. He beamed. Let's get this into prod tonight. Amelia burst in with her laptop. Texas license docs submitted. We've got a provisional approval pending fingerprint card processing. Devin popped his head in. Media's here for the New York City meetup tonight. They want a soundbite on how we ensure Canadian compliance while launching in the US. I squared my shoulders. Tell them we built a compliance-first fintech model that respects every jurisdiction's laws, from PEPIDA to the CFPB. Let them know we protect user data like it's our own. As dusk settled over Soho, we prepared for the NYC media engagement and the Texas pilot launch. Across continents and regulations, the juggernaut of Lend Forward rolled forward. I stood for a moment at the window, the city's neon glow reflecting off my notebook filled with scribbles, tasks completed, tasks pending. I whispered to the Manhattan skyline. We have built our modular fortress, flexible, dynamic, unbreakable. And now, we storm the American bastion. But beneath my confidence flickered a question. Would this siege ever end? Or was perpetual conflict the price of universal access to capital? I didn't have the answer, but I had the resolve to write every chapter in the war for financial inclusion, no matter how fierce the battle. Tomorrow, Texas would launch. Tonight, New York would watch. And through it all, we would hold our ground together. I pressed the button on the Texas dashboard and held my breath as the first microloan dispersal for the Houston pilot processed in real time. A surge of data scrolled across the screen. User Idaho 374591, the owner of a home-based landscaping business, had just received 1,200 Canadian dollars in USD equivalent funds, with repayment terms aligned to his bi-weekly billing cycle. The neural hum of the system, our modular compliance engine, our robust security layers, our resilient global infrastructure, pulsed through the cluster as the transaction completed with zero errors. Around me, the operations center in Soho erupted with cheers. Priya pumped her fist. Elias whooped, and Devin, now dialed into the Texas control room, gave me a thumbs up over video. Across half the world, under golden Texan sunlight, entrepreneurs were, at this very moment, gaining the capital they had been blocked from accessing by every gatekeeper, until now. My chest tightened with pride and relief. This moment, this solitary click, embodied every trial, every pivot, every sleepless night that had brought us here. From the first ghosted investor pitch in London, to the guerrilla barroom presentation that unlocked our Series A, to the firefights of sabotage, phishing, and DDoS that would have broken lesser teams, we had not only endured, but thrived. I rose from my chair and crossed to the central conference table, where our global leads had streamed in via video feed. Nairobi, Valencia, London, Toronto, New York, and now Houston. Each window flickered with faces bright and hopeful. I tapped the speaker button. "Team," I began, my voice steady though my heart thundered. "We did it." A chorus of jubilation answered me, voices carrying across continents. Today, Lend Forward broke the last barrier to capital access in our target markets. Today, entrepreneurs in East Africa, Europe, North America, and now the US have seen that when doors close, we build new ones. We have proven that resilience, transparency, and community-first design can conquer the sharpest obstacles. I paused, gathering the weight of moments past. But this is not the end of our journey. This is our new beginning. I clicked to a live analytics dashboard, where loan volumes, repayment metrics, and disbursement velocities all glowed in real time. Under the soft hum of cooling fans, the numbers formed constellations pointing toward unstoppable growth. Series B funding will empower our next chapter, scaling AI-driven risk models for untapped markets, expanding our financial literacy programming to over 1 million users, deepening our compliance architecture to anticipate regulatory shifts, and building partnerships that align capital with purpose. Faces across the digital grid smiled, nodded, and celebrated. Then came the inevitable question, what comes next? I smiled, recalling the words that had carried me through this odyssey. We continue to listen, to learn, and to innovate. We build on the lessons of adversity, rigorously test every line of code, every glass pane of regulation, and every handshake with a partner. We honor our borrowers by protecting their data, advocating for fair rates, and standing by their side in every moment of triumph and trial. The feed fell silent for a heartbeat, then erupted into applause and exclamations. I closed my laptop and turned to the physical room around me. Our New York hub, walls adorned with personal success stories, maps of global outreach, and framed testimonials from grateful borrowers. I thought of Aisha Mensa in London, who had called our resilience inspiring, of Miguel Alonso in Rioja, whose winery now thrived, of the woman in Nairobi who had grown her catering business into multiple franchises, of the immigrant entrepreneur in Houston whose microloan had bridged the gap to permanent residency. Lend Forward had begun as a voice in the void, a 24-year-old founder's dream, blocked at every turn. Now it was a global movement, a testament to the power of conviction and disciplined execution. I turned to Elias and Priya, the co-warriors who had never wavered. Thank you, I said simply, meaning every sleepless night, every coded patch, every crisis averted. They exchanged a look of tired triumph. No, Elias replied, thank you. Priya nodded in agreement. And in that exchange, unspoken, profound, I felt the core of our ethos, collective achievement born of shared struggle. Later, As the team dispersed into celebratory gatherings, video calls with remote colleagues, quiet dinners in dimly lit restaurants, reflective walks through Soho's cobblestone streets, I sat alone for a moment, gazing out the window at the city that never sleeps. My notebook lay open on the table, pages filled with lessons, to-do lists for compliance audits, outlines for product expansions, and scribbles of future horizons. I traced my finger along the final entry, Part 20, Beyond the Horizon, the Final Ascent. And then I closed it, a gentle grin touching my lips. Because while this chapter had reached its climactic finale, my story, our story, was an unending series of climbs, each summit revealing new peaks beyond. I whispered into the silence. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.